I'm not gonna lie, all that percussion
Oh,
right there just gets me fired up. I'm just I'm
look,
I'm
man.
I'm
I was about
I'm
to put
gassed
on.
up. Ronnie, I'm trying to do the intros here. What are you doing? You're
I was gonna
lollygagging
put on my
around.
Batman mask
All right, you do
because I
that,
was
and I'll
so
do the
pumped up
intros.
from that intro.
Good evening, fantasy football fans. It is finally here. Week 1 is 48 hours away. It is Tuesday of week 1. I am your host of Getting Defensive, founder of Gridiron Ratings, Jeff DiMatteo, and with me is wannabe Batman, Ronnie Evans. Ronnie, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm feeling great today.
I'm going to need you to use that voice for the entire show.
Jacoby Dean. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm ready for football, man. 48 hours. So excited. It's good to be back on Getting Defensive too. It's been a long time since I've hopped in on this show, and I'm ready to talk some defense, man. It'll be good.
Yeah, man. So different layout here, right? So new faces, new places, new everything, new layout. We'd be a little remiss if we didn't open the show and spend a few minutes talking about all the site changes over at gridironratings.com. And a big part of that you're going to see actually reflected through this show. Um, you know, Biggest part of what we provide when it comes to IDP has always been our start sit charts. It's always been kind of our rolling waiver wire stuff for IDP. It's been a lot of the IDP content. Well, we're going to be going about it very differently in 2022. So, first thing to know, if you were with us on the Chop Shop earlier this evening, you've already gotten a dose of this, but the gist of it is we're stepping away from a lot of written content. Okay. We're going to be getting into a lot of infographics, high impact imagery, stuff that's going to tell 1,000-word or more story and something you can digest in 15 to 30 seconds. That's kind of the gist now. I want to be able to give you a whole collection of these to look at when you pull up a category, IDP, Dynasty, DFS, whatever you want to look at. You click the stack and you can start popping through them, bing, 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 and you can just read through and digest 100,000 words worth of content and do it in only a few minutes. It's a very different take on fantasy football content. It's a very different look. It's going to be a little bit of a slog getting everything online and set up. Some of it's already there. Rankings are up. Start sit charts for week 1 are up. We've got a lot of this stuff in place. The homepage has got all kinds of content for DFS and Dynasty, and it's got a bunch of tasters of the things you can expect moving forward. So bear with us. If you have questions or if you need something you're not getting from the show or from the site, my Twitter handle is on the screen. DM me directly at NFL_DiMatteo. I'll be more than happy to help you out and get you squared away. Ronnie, I need to breathe a second. Say something about defense.
Man, well, they hike the ball, and then there's 11 guys, and they line up and they look for where the ball's going, and they try to stop it from moving forward.
Now, here's a guy.
Now he is a guy. So yeah, I think the show, or no, excuse me, the new site, the layout, everything that's going on with just paring down all of this saturated ecosystem of data and words that has become this fantasy football world we live in, and just saying, hey, swipe left, swipe right, check out another page of information about this team or this matchup. Sounds like heaven, man. I can't wait to see the full and finished product. And for those of you that are watching, go check out the website when we're done. But before you do that, click on the Gridiron Ratings playlist thing down below this one and go watch the Chop Shop. We just did an episode where we talked about offense and just in general matchups. We had some fun. We had some technical difficulties, which was embarrassing and hilarious at the same time. And more importantly, tomorrow, it's coming back. The Next Man Up podcast, where they get to talk about all of the injuries that haven't happened this offseason.
Yeah,
that's true for offense, but not really defense. We had retirements that didn't I didn't see that coming. Talking about Kareem Willis, but I'm excited to see what those guys talk about in general, getting you prepped for how to manage your teams this year with the injuries, the remaining COVID issues, and so forth.
Yeah, a couple injuries you might look out for just before tomorrow night, just in case they don't get to it, that are IDP related. Jamal Adams is going to be playing week 1. Looks like he's good to go. He's going to be wearing a cast on that finger that he had surgically repaired. This shouldn't impede his ability to stack up tackles and make big plays. So if you drafted him, roll him out there week 1 with confidence. You can feel pretty good about that. Another one, Kayvon Thibodeau, looks like he's running. It looks like he should be playing week 1 as far as I'm aware. I've got to go double check the injury reports on
Not
that.
playing him in any IDP DFS though.
Yeah, not in DFS, but no, there's if you even have that option. But if you're playing Thibodeau and you've got him as a DL on a sleeper league, like he's a useful player. And so that's a guy to keep an eye on with the knee sprain he has going on. So just a couple quick notes there. If you have been around, if you've been around the site and you've been here and you've been checking stuff out, every week what we're going to start doing now on Tuesdays is we're going to kind of take you down the rabbit hole of where we're at with some of the start sits and a lot of the waiver stuff. So just as kind of a heads up, here's where we're at with our new start sit charts, right? You go to gridironratings.com, click strategy. It's going to take you right there. It's the first thing you see. Okay. Now, when you look at this table that you're going to see is not telling you to sit guys like Myles Garrett, like Jordan Brooks, like Nick Bosa. We're not telling you to sit your studs. Okay. Look at this, assess your matchup. Always stick with your studs. Okay. You don't need to go and get cute and try and plug in some DL7 no one's ever heard of because he's got a better matchup. Use this for your DL2s, your DL3s, your depth plays when you've got to find somebody to fill in for an injury. This will help you assess role and opportunity and how it relates to future fantasy football production. So that's how we're going to use this moving forward. A couple matchups we want to talk about here. The first one is going to be Cleveland, Carolina. Now, Ronnie, I know we talked about this matchup a little bit on the Chop Shop. We talked the offensive side. Carolina goes out and they draft, Ikem Ikwanu, the big tackle out of NC State. This guy against Myles Garrett, this seems like an absolute just feast for Myles Garrett. How do you feel about this guy, week 1? I know you've got so many shares of Myles Garrett that you can barely think straight.
Are you asking about Myles Garrett?
Yes. I said Myles Garrett. How do you feel about Myles Garrett against the rookie tackle
I'm just
for Carolina?
wondering why you're asking me about Myles Garrett, because the obvious answer is sign that son of a gun up. You know what he's going to be doing the whole game? Let's just take fantasy football out of it and just run with narratives for a second.
Sure.
You're looking at Baker. He's been like, "Hey, buddy, it's me and you, and we're gonna be coming at each other this whole game, and I'm coming to take you down. It's gonna be great." I throw Myles Garrett in there, and there is IDP DFS now, and like slam dunk with Myles. You got to play a defensive end, pull him in. He'll be fine. Spend the money on it.
He's our number 1 this week for all defensive linemen. So he came in with a start sit rating of over 94. It only goes to 99, right? So, I mean, the scale breaks at 99. So he's at 94. The next closest rated guy has an 88. That's Josh Allen against Washington. This is really one of those kind of under the radar moves. If you're playing in a sleeper league and you've got that DL eligibility, plug in Josh Allen, go get him. Washington has no offensive line left. You're going to turn Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen loose on these guys. It's going to be a rough day for Carson Wentz. I'm not really excited about the Commanders. I think Jacksonville can actually go into Washington and pull out a win in week 1. And with that being the case, Josh Allen will have a lot of opportunity, potentially 40 or so snaps where he's just going to have his ears pinned back on passing downs and obvious passing situations to go get after the quarterback. And when you think about 2/3 of his snaps as pass rushing, that's going to be huge in week 1.
What do you think? I love both Josh Allens, but talking defense, I like that one too. Talking linebackers, Cole Holcomb kind of came onto the scene last year, surprised a lot of people, mainly because he's good, but also Jamin Davis wasn't great. And I'm looking on the other side, JOK is his favorite pick this year to break out at linebacker in IDP. He's an electric athlete. He's undersized, blah, blah, blah. We covered this a lot this offseason on the Chop Shop.
Sure.
And I know that you guys have here on Getting Defensive as well. But that said, behind those two guys, Cole Holcomb and JOK, you do have Anthony Walker and Jamin Davis, who should be both playing a ton of snaps. Are you interested in either of them? Are you starting either of them in your lineups this week? And if you are, what are you considering them? Linebacker 2, linebacker 3 at best? What's your take?
So I personally was avoiding them. I was generally out on Washington as a linebacker group only because I wasn't sure if the first round pick Jamin Davis was going to step in and supplant Holcomb, or if this was going to be one of those situations where he pops in mid-season. And another underrated guy that could pop up in that defense is a guy like David Mayo. I know it's not something anybody wants to hear, but if they let him just go run and hit, he's actually a really instinctive football player who's good at getting after the ball. He can pile up tackles. He can occasionally make a play in the passing game. And all that does is it muddies the waters for the other two guys. If I'm playing guys from Washington, I want Cameron Curl, the strong safety, because he gets funneled tackles. And I want guys on the D line. That's it. I'm otherwise staying far, far away from this group.
I think that's fair. In general, you have Myles Garrett. I don't know that there's a ton besides Jonathan Allen on the interior for Washington that I'm really like excited to start this week on their D line. Am I incorrect?
Dude, you take Montez Sweat, dude.
Really?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, all right, I'm talking like top 15 guys. Let me paraphrase where my head's at.
I mean, I think Sweat's going to be a useful player this week, and he's somebody that definitely needs to be considered. I think DL2 is in his range of outcomes here. I think that's probably one of the more likely ranges. And the only reason it's not DL1, if we're just kind of calling it what it is that there's going to be a lot of Travis Etienne in this football game because, I think Jacksonville wins, right? So a big part of the process is trying to identify who's going to win the football game. How's the game script going to look in the second half? Like, how does this play? How does it cultivate opportunity in IDP? Well, I expect Jacksonville to be up for the bulk of the game. And if they're up for the bulk of the game, we're going to see a lot of ETN. We're going to see a little bit of James Robinson, might even get a little Snoop Connor in there. And when we do, it's going to eliminate those pass rush snaps for guys like Montez Sweat. Sweat needs 40 or so, well, maybe not 40. He probably needs about 25 legit pass rush snaps to kind of get to a point where he gets home and makes a play.
So just talking strategy wise, I feel like for defensive linemen and just running through a couple of names, like you have like your Shaq Barrett's, Jonathan Greenard, kind of an underrated name for casual IDP players, but he should be good this week. He's a great grab just in general for redraft IDP this year. But Sweat feels to me like a ton of other defensive ends just from a strategy standpoint. I don't know that I would put him above anyone else that I'm looking at as a possible DL2. He might come in like right at the bottom for me. I think you're a little higher than I am, and I can't speak to his snaps or anything from that point. It just in general, I think the matchup's fine, but I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it with him. I haven't seen him be consistently a true generator of sacks and pressures in the way that I like, from a guy like, for example, Shaq Barrett, who probably is a DL2 this week.
Well, now these are two different things. So Shaq Barrett's only a DL in Sleeper. He's not going to be a DL on MFL and some other places. So it's important to know your platform, right?
I know, but
Shaq Barrett as a stand-up edge rusher is going to be different than the hand in the dirt Montez Sweat. So let's be clear.
Yeah.
So when I think about Sweat, I'm looking at a guy who's in an even front, 4-3 front, most downs. He's going to be on the field in all the pass rush situations. He's got high draft capital. He's been a good football player for them. It's really about the opportunity. I don't worry about snaps.
Only 26.
It's what's that? He's only 26. He's relatively young guy.
He's a young guy. He's massive too. His wing. I mean, he athletically, like the sky's the limit with him. He's always been where if you can get it between the ears and get your technique down, that you're gonna take over. And so
he's a guy that I'm keeping an eye on, and he may week one we might call it underperforming if he's a low end DL2. But I mean, when you start getting to a point where he gets to play against the Giants, I actually love that. And people are going to say, "You want against Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal?" Evan Neal did not look good in pass pro in the preseason. In fact, he looked pretty bad. And so if I can get Montez Sweat with his wingspan and his speed up against Evan Neal, it's going to be a bad day for Daniel Jones. And really, I'm going to be looking at all those tackles. Like, where are the tackle matchups? Because Sweat's a guy that can win a lot. And when we get Chase Young back and healthy, they're not going to be able to slide pass pro at Montez Sweat anymore. And so it's going to be a real coming out party for him. I think in the second half is where I'm going to look for him. You might be able to find him on waivers in some leagues because, you have more shallow, IDP lineups, or you might be able to trade for him and get him for nothing when he's only giving you single digits for a few weeks there. And then you can go ahead and leverage him down the stretch when he's getting a higher concentration of those pass rush snaps.
I think that's fair. I'm looking, I was listening to you and I was also looking ahead at Jacksonville just in general, but Sweat, whatever. Well, you know what? Here's what we'll do. I'll come back on getting defensive in like week 4 at the latest, and we'll see who's sweating. about Montez Sweat. How about that?
Well, I'll tell you what. How about we go from one Sweat to another? Why don't we talk about Josh Sweat over in Philadelphia?
All
And
right.
so, so we got the Eagles, right? This front looks absolutely disgusting. I don't know how anyone's going to defend them. Like, I just
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
Josh Sweat is the cheapest guy that you can get in terms of an edge player that's out there that comes from a team that stands to be ahead more weeks than not, has a lot of pass rush opportunity, and could see a major uptick in his pressure rate. You can't double team Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave. You still are going to have to isolate Sweat on one side and Hassan Reddick on the other. One of those two guys is getting home. It's going to be like a track meet to the quarterback. That's
So
going to
what
be
about
really telling.
well, just scenario wise? So let's say you got Jordan Davis and Cox on the inside, and
Mhm.
skipping over, and just on the edge, you got Sweat on one end. Hassan Reddick's probably pulling in on the other end, and
Mhm.
let's say they got Nakobe Dean flying in on a gap blitz, and just in general,
Oof.
I feel like that team is going to generate a ton of pressure this year.
Mhm.
And just overall team pressure metrics. I haven't looked at your overall spreadsheets that you put together in a couple weeks, but do you think? Let's say we're talking sleeper. So Son Reddick is a D end.
Mhm. Dual designated. Mhm.
Yeah. Do you put him over Josh or
Yeah.
you?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm looking at Sweat as a guy that I can get, maybe. Again, I don't know how deep a lot of these leagues are, right? Some guys only play 3 IDPs. A guy like Josh Sweat's on waivers. He's available, right?
Sure.
So, if you can go get a guy like Josh Sweat for free as we start to see some injuries or some guys underperform, you need to start looking at bye week fillers. Start getting those in now, or we're talking about some of these guys where by week, 4, 5, 6, these are going to be good football players that you're going to want to have for fantasy. So Josh Sweat's a guy I like. They're going to rotate in Jordan Davis. They're going to rotate him, Cox, and Hargrave, so they're all fresh. I don't expect Nakobe Dean to be on a lot of those gap blitzes. This is going to be a situation where you're going to have Nakobe Dean, Kaiser White, probably when they're on the field in coverage. The Eagles told us who they are defensively by saying, hey, look, we want our backers to cover. They drafted Nakobe Dean as one of the best coverage backers we've seen in college football in a long time. You got Kaiser White, he's a coverage specialist. You bring in both those guys, you're saying, hey, look, we're going to cover the intermediate part of the field, especially when we go into nickel. Like, that's who we're going to be. And we're going to get after it with our 4 guys up front because we know you can't double Cox and Hargrave without isolating our 2 edges on tackles. And if you do that, then you have to keep in a back, you have to keep in a tight end. We are going to reduce the number of receivers in the formation, thus giving them a lot of advantages in the secondary. So the Eagles are just going to outman you up front in such a way that it forces the offense's hand and it allows these guys to either A, they're getting home in a hurry, or B, they're going to go ahead and they're going to account for all the rushers and then throw interceptions on the back half. The Eagles defense is going to be really exciting. There's going to be a lot of IDP points scored there.
Um, hey, can I throw a team out there?
Sure.
Super exciting defense this year. Had a couple major acquisitions, one of which I think is equally as important as the other, but isn't as big of a name. That would be the Los Angeles Chargers. They're playing the Raiders this week. Raiders
Mm-hmm.
have had some fluctuation, I would say, at the minimum, with their offensive line over the last couple seasons. And
Sure.
I know that everyone loves Joey Bosa, right? Hopefully, he's a defensive end on MFL. He's a linebacker right now, or he was. He's switched in a couple of my leagues. I honestly can't keep track of it. Make sure your league has him as the position that you think he is.
Mm-hmm.
But inside, right? Linval is a much better pass rusher, but Sebastian Joseph Day, this son of like when he was playing last year. Granted, he was with Aaron Donald, but his pace was like better than some of Aaron Donald's recent seasons from an IDP perspective. It was absurd. So even if he's 80% of what he was able to do there against this Raiders offensive line, just in general, especially DT required leaves, SJD is one of my favorite plays this week in all of IDP.
I love it. I love that a lot. Let me actually take a look. Let me see. We're looking at. So I'm going to see where I can find him on the old start sit chart here and see where he's at.
Well, the other guy that'll get rotated in is probably Jerry Taylor, and I wouldn't touch him in IDP, but him and Linval seem like they're going to make up most of the interior snaps. I'd be curious to see if you have anything different from your numbers.
Yeah, I mean, right now he actually, he's really low but it's only because we don't have enough information on where
Sure.
he stands with the Chargers. And so that's a guy where I think as soon as we get a little bit of information on his snap rotation with the Chargers, because they're going to rotate. That's what they want to do. They want to stay
Right.
fresh. Sebastian Joseph Day is a guy that's got a ton of talent. My concern is he's such a good real life football player, and he's so good at eating up blocks, and he's so good at dismantling a couple of those blocks that a lot of times plays go away from him. Or what they'll do is they'll say, all right, well, we're going to double you down, and we're going to leave a back nearby to chip you and keep an eye on, Bosa or Mac coming off the edge. That's the only thing that could get in the way.
Here's the thing. So I'll just throw out, since I haven't been on getting defensive a lot recently, the way I approach a lot of IDP is actually to go to guys like Jeff and look at guys like Ryan Sitzman and these Justin Barnes, guys who have been around doing this for a long time, or at least know more about this than I do typically. And especially in Jeff's case, like, so much more schematically about how the NFL operates than I do. And I know more than all of my friends, but I wouldn't consider myself an amateur professional at diagnosing NFL defenses.
Are you saying we're not friends? I don't know how I feel about that.
We are super. You know more about this than any of my friends. But my strategy when it comes to analyzing IDP, especially positions like defensive tackle, who can often provide you a defensive line like DL2, DL3 performance if you play the right matchups, is looking for guys and just trying to find the middle ground between what I view as their like worst case scenario and the best case scenario. And I know that sounds super rudimentary. You're talking about like, what if they put an extra guy on a couple assignments on Sebastian Joseph Day? I'm not as worried about that with him as I am probably 25 other defensive tackles in the NFL right now for IDP, because you have Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Derwin James, Linval Joseph, and a couple guys like Jerry Tillery who have upside. We'll see if they ever come to fruition there. I know he's been a hot IDP name. He's not great. But
I'd rather have Sebastian Joseph Day than Jerry Tillery.
Oh, 100%. Nobody has Jerry Tillery super high anymore. He was kind of a could-be name for a while on a few sites. But I look at a guy like Sebastian Joseph Day, and I see a matchup like they have. It's gonna be a high-scoring game. He's gonna get, looks like, probably 50 to 60% snap count from the interior, and his secret sauce is actually his pass rush. He's an incredible run stuffer, but he can pull off and hit the quarterback, and he was doing that at a double-digit rate last year before he got hurt. I know Aaron Donald was there, but you know who wasn't there on that team? Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. So like the whole argument against him and the gravity, if you want to use a basketball term, with Aaron Donald, I've never bought. He just needs marquee players around him to pull defenders away, and he can perform. So I'll stop rambling, but I really do love him. I think he's a great play this year in IDP in general. And this
I love that.
Guy.
I mean, I do love that take, because here's kind of what we were trying to get to, right? It was a matter of, okay, well, how's he going to be lined up, and how is he? That's why he's not really high on the week one start sits. And that's why really, like, we always tell people, hey, look, the first 3 weeks we make them free to the public, because we're still trying to get the rhythm of what the teams look like this year figured out. So week 4 through the rest of the year, they're rock solid, right? As the Chargers come in, if you're telling me they're going to line him up on either side, Bosa or Mac's side, and they're going to put him in that 5 technique and put him in a position to isolate him in one-on-one situations, because ideally a team will want to isolate him on a guard, because they're going to need their left or right tackle out there taking care of Bosa and Mac, because those guys are coming.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah. So, and if we get him on a guard, it's a winning move. It's Sebastian Joseph Day all day, and double-digit sacks is very much in the realm of possibility. This is a guy that goes from being maybe a 3 or 4 sack, type guy if he's getting tackles. But if he's getting a guard, you're talking about a 12 sack type of a player, because those matchups are going to be so much more in his favor, because he's going to be so much quicker. He's going to have faster hands, faster feet. And when his hands and feet are working in unison, and you're telling me the pocket is collapsing around the perimeter, he's going to be able to operate in a 2-gap type of a space where he's going to have direct line to the quarterback. And it's going to be absolutely horrifying for quarterbacks.
Right. The last thing I would say on him, and this is in general for IDP, one of the things I always find myself falling back on is players in the off season, particularly on the defense, that are consistently brought up by the beat reporters and the coaches as leaders on that team. And for him, from the moment he walked into the building as a free agent, like they've talked about Khalil, just in general, the AFC West has like 50 different fantastic defensive players that are been brought in over the last couple of seasons. But SJD is like, he has been talked about as one of the top voices on the defense and often referred to as like the veteran leader of that core and of the front seven. And so if that's the way they view him in the locker room, and I know how good he is as a player, I look at it the same way as a guy like Jordan Davis in the future, where he's going to be so good. He'll get a million people sending bodies there. He'll have the most attention of anyone on that team. But if they keep putting guys like Josh Sweat into their lineup and Hassan Reddick, you won't be able to double team him. I feel that way about SJD right now.
Cool. Well, you know what? I love
Moving
the take,
on.
and I think he's a
Sorry.
great player. Hey, we did have a comment here. Now, we know this is a defensive show, but we have an offensive question here because, hey, these things, offense and defense, have to go together. Our guy Dirty Money here, half-point PPR, Terry McLaurin against the Jaguars, Rashad Penny against Denver. I'm taking McLaurin. What say you?
I'm not going to be shocked if Rashad Penny finishes as top 12 running back this week, but I'll take McLaurin.
You think Russell would? So in the chop shop, hey, Dirty Money, I don't know if you caught the chop shop we did just before this.
I'm not putting money on that. I'm just saying.
Yeah. He thinks
He's
Russell
gonna get
Wilson's
fed.
going for 304. And so if Denver's stomping out Seattle like that, Penny's not going to be the right play. But I expect Washington to lose to Jacksonville.
I'm just covering both of the. I'm covering my.
Yeah,
base.
it's okay. You're just out here. You're hedging. It's all right, hedging McHedgerson here. Terry McLaurin in a half-point PPR. I like him better against Jacksonville. Volume should be there. I think Jacksonville wins that game, so it's going to be negative game script. A lot of target potential there for McLaurin. Generally, though, running backs are typically better. I just don't like the impossible whopper against Denver here.
That's fair. Give me another.
Thanks, Dirty Money.
I talked about SJD for a million minutes there.
It was, I loved it. You were waxing poetic about him, and I can appreciate that because you were actually telling me about this guy back in like April. I think we were doing a draft for something. I don't remember, but I feel like you were telling me in April about him, and you were so happy
about him with Mike Waller too, because he did post about him a few times on 444 this offseason early on.
Gotcha. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's talk about backers, right? Everyone always says, linebackers. You can always find a linebacker. I've been a big fan of Jordan Brooks, right? Jordan Brooks, I have him pegged as my guy who's going to lead the NFL in tackles this year. I have him pegged as a dude who's going to be able to make plays all over the field, right? He's got a really wide tackle radius, first-round draft capital kind of a guy, so they think pretty highly of him. They let Bobby Wagner walk so he can become the guy. The question is not Jordan Brooks, but how many tackles is Cody Barton really going to get? You're a former Seahawks fan. You're rehabilitated. But you've watched a lot of Cody Barton. Tell us about this guy and how is he going to factor into the Seahawks defense in terms of IDP?
So the early word on the street was Cody Barton was going to be the green dot guy. It sounds more like, while that's going to remain true in a lot of situations, they're both going to share an interior lead role, and Jamal Adams is going to be calling a lot of the plays there. That said, I think Cody Barton, if you look at what this is like, I'll give you just the word off the street, stupid person that doesn't know anything about football's take. Like, oh, the stats. Look at Jordan Brooks last year. Now he's Bobby Wagner, and Cody Barton is now Jordan Brooks. Like, that's not really true, but it's not totally false. Jordan Brooks is going to be utilized as a chess piece in that linebacker role in a way that Bobby Wagner was never able to, just because he doesn't have the same athletic skill set, right? They're different players, but Jordan Brooks will be the tackle monster on that team. Cody Barton, though, I think he's going to be a consistent linebacker 2, linebacker 3 week in and week out, and he's going to finish this year with 100 or more tackles minimum.
Boom.
This week I love him. I love him with the amount of running that Denver's going to do. I know I talked about 304 for Russ. That's mostly because he's going to have a big FU on his forehead. Yeah. But Nathaniel Hackett wants to run the ball this year. Let's make it clear. And the opportunity is going to be there for those guys. And I don't love Seattle's interior D. And just in general, I don't love their entire front seven as a whole. Everything's going to funnel to those two guys, just like it did last year.
Yeah, their D line is they're like the equivalent of just like a bunch of meat shields up there. So that Jordan Brooks and Cody Barton,
there's not that there's bad guys like Darrell Taylor. I would be remiss not to mention him as a guy that I love more for the NFL than I do for fantasy.
Sure.
They have good players, but not a lot.
Fantasy. Good player. I don't love him for fantasy unless you're playing in a really deep league. I'll tell you what, let's stay in the NFC West. A lot is being made of what's going on down in Arizona, right? Sure. That is objectively one of the worst defensive units I've seen in a long time. Vance Joseph doesn't seem to have any clue what he's doing. He leads the NFL in blitz percentage like every year. And if he's not number one, he's in the top 3 or 4 usually. You've got this guy in Isaiah Simmons. You spent a top 15 or something pick on him in the NFL draft. He runs like the wind. He's 6'4", he's 215. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, he's got ball skills, and they can't freaking figure out how to use him. Are you kidding me right now? You just gave your strong safety. Well, I'm going to paint a picture for you. You gave the strong safety $11 million a year in Thompson over here. You got Budda Baker over the top. And I've got people in this industry right now telling us Isaiah Simmons is going to be a defensive back this year. He's not. Spoiler alert. The guy's working on coverage techniques, working with defensive backs to heighten his skill set on sub-package downs.
Let me throw in a little poetry for you. Kyle Hamilton is as much of a linebacker as Isaiah Simmons is a defensive back.
There it is.
How they're going to be used equally out of position. But Kyle Hamilton is better suited to do that than Isaiah Simmons is.
I think Kyle Hamilton has better instincts. He's a better natural. He's a football player. He doesn't have the same measurables. Simmons
makes more sense to take a player like Kyle Hamilton, use him in multiple roles on the defense than it does Isaiah Simmons, where you give him multiple roles within the same ecosystem within the defense. You don't like I get it.
If you have Simmons, don't panic is going to be the big thing. And if somebody in your league has Simmons and they are panicking, this is a window to buy him cheap, really cheap.
Can we pivot to the other linebacker there real quick?
We're actually going to. Right? That's you're getting ahead of my segue. I had a series of segues lined up here. It looked like a
Here, look, I'll mute myself for 45 seconds. Take it away, Jeff.
It's really weird when you're on mute because I feel like I'm just talking into a tunnel. So here's the thing. Isaiah Simmons is going to play sub-package backer. He and Zaven Collins will be next to each other in the middle of the field. He will occasionally kick into the slot to cover. He will occasionally kick into the slot to blitz because Vance Joseph likes to blitz. He blitzes a lot. Top 5 in the NFL every year he's been a coordinator. They're going to blitz. Simmons is going to be used similarly to imagine like what Jamal Adams did 2 years ago, where he had 6 or 7 sacks for Seattle. Then he also had about 90 tackles. That's probably what we're looking at for Isaiah Simmons. He's not going to be a 100-tackle guy, but if he goes out and gets you 90 and he gets you 6 sacks and he gets you 3 interceptions and he's got a handful of passes defensed, guess what he's done for you? He's given you a linebacker 2 quality season, and there's potential for a lot more just purely based on the fact that he's so damn fast that he can get to places on the field that not everybody can get to, at least not from where he's lining up. So if someone's panicking on Simmons, let him, buy him cheap, offer him some garbage, see if you can get him. If you want to stick him on your bench and wait until he proves it, do it. You're going to be thrilled at the end of the year when he gives you some really nice numbers. So, but with that, the guy that I want to ask you about, because I know this is kind of your crush, you love this guy, is Zaven Collins, another first-round pick. They've spent 2 first-round picks back-to-back on linebackers. 2. Tell me about Zaven Collins and why you love him.
So Zaven Collins and Kenneth Murray both. I love both those guys equally at one point in time.
Your Kenneth Murray love is off the charts. I'll tell you, we'll do Kenneth Murray next.
No, it's over, man. It's been over for about 6 months. He did not look like a guy that I wanted to own in fantasy last year when he was playing. And I know he was hurt, but he has to prove it to me that he's worth me putting my reputation on the limb or out on a limb for him again. Zaven Collins, though, like, oh my gosh, I can't keep track of what the beat reporters are saying because half the time they think he's going to be fine. And the other half, they're talking about him being replaced entirely. I don't know what to do other than not put him in my lineups right now. He's on a taxi squad in a team or for a team that I'm in a league with Jeff right now. I won the championship last year and I lost 4 of my linebackers and I've kept him on the taxi squad because it's a contract league, so it's a little different. But I don't know yet. I don't know what to think of him except for like maximize long-term value because right now I can't have faith in him producing it for IDP. And here's the thing. I'll add this in. He is so good. He's so big. He's so quick for a human that is his size that it is the same as Isaiah Simmons. It's got to make sense if they're not totally just jabronis or we're completely wrong about him, which could be. I'm not paid to do this. But
if these guys can't get it right this year, the blame falls squarely at Vance Joseph's feet.
I would agree with that.
So here's a question I've got for you.
I would put in Isaiah Simmons over Zayvon Collins right now.
Okay. Well, and I would too. But here's a question: how many games do you think Arizona wins this year?
11.
Wow. All right, you're way ahead of me because I've got them for about between 7 and 9.
I think they're going to eat the Seahawks alive this year.
Well, that's 2.
Total tune change for what typically happens.
And they'll get smacked by the Rams, and maybe they split with the 49ers or even get smacked by the 49ers.
I think they're going to play closer with the Rams and the 49ers than you're expecting.
So here's the question. On offense, you have no running game. James Conner's a touchdown machine, but he's not exactly explosive. There's no more Chase Edmonds. Eno Benjamin's the other guy, and he's just a guy. You got Zach Ertz is already hurt. You got Trey McBride is still a project and it's not ready yet. D-Hop's out for 6 weeks. You got Hollywood Brown. We know what he is. Where are their points coming from?
Hollywood Brown's going to be fantastic. Zach Ertz is going to be. I'm gonna channel my inner Twitter for you. Hollywood Brown, Zach Ertz, Trey McBride maybe later. Ron Elmo, we don't know what to do with him, but he'll be fine.
That sounds like Twitter.
So I'm looking at this team. If we take fantasy out of it, Kyler Murray is a stud. He was a stud last year before he got hurt, and he can.
Well, when he's doing his homework and not chilling out playing Xbox.
I think he's going to do his homework a little more this year. But my X factor is DeAndre Hopkins, so I really am leaning into like layman on the street names here. But DeAndre wasn't himself last year.
That and he's missing really 6 games this year.
He's missing 6 games this year. However, if I don't think there's a universe that exists where Michael Thomas comes back and becomes a thing, and DeAndre Hopkins doesn't.
Well, let's not spend too much time on the
statistical data to back up that claim, other than I am looking into the future and I'm giving you a BS reason.
Let's focus on defense. Here's the thing. No, I'm cutting you off. You've gone too far on offense. It's too much.
Dude, their Vegas line I think is 9.5, and I would probably take the over, but I wouldn't feel great about it.
Yeah, I'm not going to feel great about it, but I want the under, I guess, only because I think 9's probably right there. Here's the deal. How many games do you think they win without D-Hop? He's out for 6. If you were just to look at that offense in a vacuum, how many teams in the NFL could they beat body for body?
I think that a quarterback like Kyler Murray genuinely gives you a floor of 7 wins. 6 to 7 wins if he plays every single game.
I'm talking about the 6 games that D-Hop is out. And let's assume we've got a banged up Ertz and you have no run game. And the offensive line we already know is patchwork because Rod Hudson's already hurt again.
Well, I think you're disrespecting James Conner. He'll be great until he gets hurt.
So week 3, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I was wrong. Their total in Vegas is 8.5.
Numbers getting lower. I think that's probably right on the mark. I had between 7 and 9.
I bet you that they could. I think that they'll win at least 3 of the first 6.
Okay, so here's the thing. If they're getting 3 out of the first 6, what we're looking at then is a lot of negative game script and a lot of neutral game script. They're not up a whole lot. And if that's the case, what it creates is tackle opportunity, right? If they're a negative game script, that means teams are generally running. If teams are running, Simmons and Collins have to benefit, right? Like, we're not going to see a ton of Marcus Golden coming off the edge. We're not going to see a ton of Cameron Thomas coming off the edge. It's going to be Simmons and Collins. And there's going to be some Jalen Thompson because that guy had 100 tackles as a strong safety last year.
Yeah, I love him. He's another just super easy way to play IDP. Pay attention to the guys that get paid, and typically just throw your trades, try to get those guys on your team.
But anyway, I just want to make people feel better about Zayvon Collins and Isaiah Simmons because there's going to be a lot of tackle opportunity. And in a 3-4 defense, it's not coming for the 3 defensive linemen.
I'm not playing any of the Cardinals defenders this week.
I will take if I've got Thompson, I'm playing him.
Well, I guess you would have to for some of them, depending on how deep your league is.
Give me Thompson as a DB, borderline DB1. He's probably not even borderline. He's probably right in there. And then your linebackers, Simmons, love him. Collins, like him a lot. I really think these guys have an opportunity to do something here. I think all the camp hype has been a little overblown. Like I said, somebody in your league's freaking out. Go buy up those players, get those shares, lock them into your lineup. Maybe not lock them into your lineup, lock them into your roster. I know. We're going to get out of here. We got 6 minutes. There was one last guy we had to hit.
All right.
Because you mentioned him earlier. Kenneth Murray.
Okay.
It's do or die season for Kenneth Murray. Here's the question I have for the industry, whole industry. Who have the Chargers added at linebacker? I don't mean edge, so Khalil Mack doesn't count. He and Bosa are edges. Who did they add to play linebacker?
Should we just close the episode now?
Because there's freaking nobody. There's nobody. They let Kaiser White walk away, who played like 600 snaps or whatever. He's gone, right? They added nobody, and they're sitting on high draft capital Kenneth Murray. Kenneth Murray's going to be given every opportunity to win this job and to do everything he can do to pile up some numbers. This is a situation Kenneth Murray, Isaiah Simmons, Patrick Queen, these are all guys that IDP folks just hate, loathe them. I don't know why. They just are very vindictive people. Go buy these players cheap. They cost nothing right now. People will give you Patrick Queen for nothing.
The
and he gets
highest
100
is
tackles
Isaiah Simmons, who is the census 40th IDP player this week.
Yeah, 40. I mean, hey, you know what? If he's 40, what is he as a linebacker? What is he, 20? 25?
Somewhere around there. Yeah, let me see.
So you're telling me he's a linebacker 3. I think he can outperform that a little bit. Anyway, just take these players. They're cheap. They're going to outperform the ADPs they're putting up, and you don't want to wait until it's too late. Go trade for these players. Get them for nothing right now. Just get them and stash them on your bench. There's nothing wrong with stashing up these high upside players. So go do that. It's getting late. It is a Tuesday. Tomorrow night, next man up right here on the Gridiron Ratings Network. Check us out. If you haven't already, hit like, hit subscribe. Go check out my man at Ronnie A. Evans on the Twitters. He's going to be doing some unannounced Twitter spaces, apparently. We announced it, so it's no longer unannounced.
I'm not saying anything else, though. I'm going live tomorrow. Sometime between 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock.
Sometime in that window. Kind of like the 7 and 9 wins for Arizona.
Yeah.
So once again, I am your host, Jeff DiMatteo, founder of Gridiron Ratings. Check out the new site. We're loading a ton of new stuff in all the time. There's going to be some clunkiness. Hit me up if you need anything. I'm happy to help you get whatever you need to win a title. Good night. Good luck. Happy week 1. I got to hit a button here. What? What do you want me to do? What? You're pointing at the thing.
No. That's not for you. It's for the viewers. Look.
Oh, is that what that is?
Look down there, everyone.
Have a good night, guys.